for a while, but when you get there, when you get off the plane and there you are in Tangier again, you feel, I feel, this re-entry into this ancientness, which it's easy in this what we laughingly call the first world, to really forget that that world is there, has been ticking along in many similar ways for centuries. And she is absolutely groundbreaking and belonging to the future, yes, but she is also tapping into something really ancient. And the fact that we see all these women there this time, there's something about this woman's music that has a real meaning for Adam in the years ago.
We have a last question?
You mentioned, yes, you mentioned the gloves as something that you added to the myth of vampires. I felt you also added a new hairstyle for vampires, which is great. I'm curious about the costumes. I loved especially Eve's embroidery. There's also a timelessness, what you already addressed with the music. Could you speak a little bit about the costume choices, the timelessness there?
Well, I'll talk about the hair, and you can talk about it. I don't know. The hair thing was really interesting. I wanted them to have wild hair. I wanted them to look partly animalistic and even behave like half animals and half very sophisticated humans. And so we were trying to make these wigs for them and this hair, and we're trying on different things. We were in Cologne in Germany, working with Gerd, our makeup hair designer, who was great. And we just weren't getting an interesting texture. And we were looking at different textures of hair in photographs online, on the internet. And Tilda said, well, you keep saying animal, the animal thing is missing. Why are we just looking at humans? Let's start looking at animal fur. So we started looking at animals and different monkeys and llamas and different textures of fur and hair. And then Gerd said that he had in the past mixed some goat and yak fur into human hair to make it thicker, and Tilda was like, let's try that. So then we tried that, weaving in, and in the end their wigs for John Hurt, for Tilda, for Tom, and for Mia were made of a certain percentage of human hair mixed with goat and yak hair. So again, why? I just wanted them to look kind of wild. No, Anton's hair did not have animal hair mixed in, but it was a wig. But it was all human. He's not a vampire.
The wardrobe question.
Oh, the wardrobe question. Again, it was a real leap of the imagination to free ourselves from anything that felt tied to any one time. Or rather, we were making a bouquet, so we wanted them to look like they had lived through all these times. So, you know, if you put too much of one flower in a bouquet, it tends to overwhelm. We needed to just do a smorgasbord of all these different references, but for them never to look fashionable. I mean, they are too snobbish to be fashionable, let's face it. Too snobbish to be snobs. And so it was very important, and Jim was really clear with us, with Bina, the great costume designer we worked with, trying to kind of strip all the elements, every glove, every jacket, from any contemporary or any remotely fashion reference, although they had to feel like they could have been at any time. And do you know, I thought of something so strange this morning, I just have to tell you. It occurred to me, this is completely personal and ridiculous, but I made a film once called Orlando, in which I play someone who lives for hundreds of years, and the last thing I ended up wearing in that film, which again chose very carefully because we wanted it to feel timeless, was a cream silk shirt and a pair of sort of pale, goldy suede trousers. And that's what we started with this film, so very repetitive, I'm afraid. But this feeling of trying to find this lowest common denominator was this thing that repeated, even from that conversation around Orlando. What could you have worn in the 15th century? What could you have worn in the 18th century? What could you have worn in the 60s? What could you have worn in the 80s? And what could you be wearing now? In fact, now was not really that important to us. But what could have lasted? What could, like John Hurt, who's been wearing that waistcoat because he loves it for 500 years. Why not? things lasting and them not being tied to the times. It's easy to say, but it was very difficult to actually free ourselves from hanging on to, oh yeah, that looks so 50s. No, if it looks 50s, let's refine it again. Let's make it look like nothing. Let's make it look like a bit 50s, a bit 70s, a bit 1580s. And then you would start to land. When we could see that it was all smudgy and vague, then we started to land. But it was a piece of work, I have to say.
I like the detail when Eve notices that Adam's dressing gown is like 200 years old. And he says, is it? It seems very familiar. But when people say, no, you've been wearing that thing for 25 years.
That's it.
Thank you so much.